There we go. Webcam on. Stream is live. And I have volume, so all is right in the world. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the workshop. I'm just going to rearrange my windows here real quick. I think I have everything lined up. I'm actually, strangely, kind of on track this morning. It's probably because I've been out here for about an hour and a half sanding stuff. Because I won't say I'm behind, but I didn't get as much done yesterday as I wanted to. Not because I wasn't out in the shop, just because sometimes this stuff just takes longer. Pardon me, I'm always like cleaning my glasses or cleaning the sleep out of my eyes. That's a bad habit, but I always seem to do it. Anywho, we left off on... What day is today? Wednesday. We left off on Monday, where I had put the zebra striped wood, zebra wood, as you will, which looks a lot like this. I had made a couple of bases with the zebra wood, and we had done the joinery on those, and we put them in clamps, and they were resting. But that was the only thing I had actually done was that zebra wood, and I felt like it really wasn't an efficient use of my time to just work on like two little bases. Well, they're little, but two bases. And a lot of that because I do this on stream. If I didn't have things to occupy the rest of my time, it was kind of like I felt like I was not getting good use out of my shop time. And while I'm not a business, I do try to go by good business practice, which is to be efficient when I'm making things to sell, as opposed to making things that I really enjoy doing and, creating new things and new woodworking experiences for myself. That's different. If I'm like, oh, I want to try a new project or whatever, that's different. But when I'm making things to sell, I try to act like a business and be efficient so that I can create product and create a lot of it and maximize my time in the shop and benefit by getting more product out the door. So yeah, I felt like just having two bases was kind of a waste of my time in terms of producing things to sell, not in terms of making stuff, because it's never a waste of time to be in the shop making stuff. But in terms of making things to sell, it was kind of limiting me by just only having two, because generally I will have more and I work those behind the scenes when I'm not on camera and fill the rest of my shop time with those other projects and just kind of keep things flowing so that typically when I get to the end of a base that I'm making on camera, that I've got 5, 6, 7 more that I can sell and then keep my shop full of goodies. And I think Monday I showcased my new online shop that I created to sell my stuff. I'm going to try that for a while. I probably will still have to push product over to my Etsy shop until I can get my own shop established, and that takes a while because even like SEO search engine optimization, when Google or Bing or whoever excuse me, is searching for keywords that you type in to look for something, it takes a while for their search engines to crawl through websites, especially new ones, and accumulate the data that your site contains in order to push it out to someone searching for it. So the actual URL, the address of my webpage, was actually being used for a different page. I was just doing a little blog with it, and I didn't keep up with the blog, and I was like, you know what? Let me use that because it's a name that I already own. I didn't really use the website for a couple of years, so it didn't really have any content that I cared about. So I ditched all of that and use that URL, but it's not going to come back in searches for people if they go in and go, I need to find a wooden sewing machine base, right? That's the search term, or Singer base for Singer sewing machine, or any of those things. I need those search terms to point to my web page so that people can find me. And the more stuff I dump in there and the longer period of time that it's up and running live, the more it will pop up in searches. So that's kind of my deal, is getting it relevant to a search so that when somebody goes searching, it'll pop up. But until it gets established, my stuff is just going to sit in there in Cricket Town, chirp, chirp. So I need to make sure that I'm still selling things, because having a ton of product on my shelves in the basement isn't doing anything for anybody. It's not getting them into the hands of the people who need them. It's not putting money into the pocket of me so I can buy more wood and things like that. So I still will probably, over time, I'll let them marinate in the new shop for a while, and then I'll co-list them on Etsy. If they sell on Etsy, I'll delete the listings off of my site. But I would love to sell them on my site, because then, like I said, I'm not giving Etsy a piece of my pie. And typically I have to charge more because Etsy takes a piece. And so I raise my prices to accommodate for the fact that I don't make as much money. And it is what it is. But anyway, until I get established, I'm going to have to keep doing that. But getting back to the original point, which is I need to make sure that I've got product to sell, because if there's nothing in my shop, then there's no one searching and it's not going to come up, because I just need people to be able to find it and share it and put it out there. So my game plan here is, I was selling on Facebook. I'm still going to advertise or post about the new things that I make on Facebook with a link to my new site so that people can find it. And I have friends in the community who are in a bunch of different sites. So if somebody says, oh, hey, does anybody know where I can find a base? They can say, hey, go check out this website, and start pushing people to the website that way. There are some of these groups, honestly, that deal in vintage Singer sewing machines and things like that. They have thousands, and I kid you not, like some of them have like over 25,000 users in their groups. So being able to get that stuff pushed out from other community members, not from me, I wouldn't go in there and just spam them with, hey, come to this website, because A, they'll ban you. There are a couple of them where it's selling stuff for machines that are set up just for that. So yeah, you can go in there and do those, and I do. But the big ones, you need somebody to recommend, or hey, I just saw this, check this out, and they'll put a link to a product in my page, and then that's different because that's someone else. It's not their site, and then it kind of brings people in. So anyway, that's my hope, is that I can get traffic to start going through there, but I need to have product, because it doesn't do any good. I'm not going to draw people in without product in the shop. Right now I've got about 9 items in there. I am hopeful to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more items to add to the shop. And that's kind of where we are right now, because I have the 2 zebra wood bases that I'm working on, but I wanted to add some more because, like I said, just too not efficient use of my time, and honestly not good bang for my buck. So I milled up a bunch of wood yesterday, and I have, let's see, walnut and sapele and Jatoba, and what else do I have here? There's some more sapele and some paduk, which is paduk right here. So really kind of cool orangey, rust orange color. This is the sapele with the walnut, and this is the Jatoba. And I need to get these to the same state that the zebra ones are in. But it took me a while because I had to mill the boards. I had to get them cut to the right sizes. I had to figure out, okay, what am I going to make out of them? Because I have a board that's this long. What can I yield out of that board? And once I got that figured out, then I had to cut them to size, to length, and get them trimmed to the right width, and then cut them to length. And then once I got them cut to length, well, then I had to go and put the finger holes in them, because without the finger holes, I don't know what I'm going to say there, but anyway, I have to have finger holes in there. So I had to put the grips in there, which means I had to set up the CNC machine and get that ready for action. And then I had to do all of the finger grips. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them needed the finger grips, the handles, to be CNC'd in there. And they were all kind of different sizes, so I kind of had to set up a little differently for each one. It was close, but it still takes time. And then if you figure, it's about 10 minutes per set of handles. So that was, probably a good couple of hours for me to get all the CNC work done. Once the CNC work was done, and then I also did one of them. I did a logo on the front of one of them. You can't see that because I'm on the wrong camera. But I did a logo on the front of one of them like this, which is nice. This is the walnut, and that turned out really nice. It always does. But anyway, I had to do all the CNC work too. So yesterday I was milling, I was cutting, I was doing CNC work, and it's still not ready for putting into clamps, which is the next thing, because I have to cut joinery on them, but I can't cut the joinery. I guess I could cut the joinery, but I can't put them into glue until they've been sanded. So I spent this morning sanding, a lot of sanding. I got everything done to 120. So all of these have been sanded up to a 120 grit. I want to do up to 150 for the interiors. I don't have to go as high on the interiors. What? Who's pinging me? I don't have to go as high as I would the exteriors. These are going to get an oil finish, all of these, and I'm going to try a new finish for some of them called Odie's oil. So I want to make sure that I have them sanded appropriately, because with Odie's oil, you control the sheen or the shininess of the product by how, or the wood, by how fine you sand. So if you stop sanding at, say, 220, it'll have kind of a semi, well, not even a semi, kind of like a satin finish. If you go up to, say, 300 or 320, it'll have more of a semi-glossish look. So somewhere in that 320 to 400 range, the sheen will be kind of more like a semi-gloss, which is what I'm after. If you go up to like 600, you can get a really glossy thing. The cool thing about the Odie's oil, which some of the product that you use to finish with, it tells you to stop at 180 or 220, because it doesn't increase the shine and it doesn't increase the smoothness of the wood anymore. You kind of reach a threshold, and the more you sand, the harder it is for the product to get into the wood. Odie's oil is different. You can take Odie's oil up to like 2,000 if you want to, and it does not affect the oil's effectiveness of working as a finish. And it's an oil wax finish that kind of soaks in, and you buff it off, and it looks really cool. And so I'm going to give that a try. I haven't purchased it yet, but I can get it on Amazon, but it's expensive. It's like $50 a jar, but a little teeny bit goes a long way. But we'll see how that works, and we'll give it a review when we get there. That being said, I'm at a point where I've got all of these things cut now. I've got 3 of them, well, 2 of them sanded to 150, which is as high as I'm going to go on the inside. I need to sand 1 more to 150, and then we will do the joinery on those, put those into clamps, because I have enough clamps to cover that, and then we can kind of move forward on the zebra, take them out of the clamps and kind of move forward, and that kind of gets everything there. Tomorrow I'll take the rest of them I've got these 3 right here. There's 1, 2, 3. We will get these. This one needs 150, which won't take long at all. And then we will get them over to the table saw. We will cut the joinery on those. We will put these 3 into clamps. The other 3, 1, 2, 3, I've got 3 more smaller ones. So they're this size, right? They're small. These I will finish tomorrow and get them into clamps because I don't have enough clamps to do them all right now anyway. And tomorrow morning, or whenever I get out here tomorrow, I can take these out of the clamps, get those put into the clamps. By the time we come back here on Friday, everything will be in box form and ready to roll, and we can kind of move forward. I also need to go to the, I'm looking at my flat wood storage, my sheet goods, and I have none. So I need to go get some wood to use for base bottoms, which is 1/4-inch ply. I need 1/4-inch plywood to put in the bottoms. I have none of that, so I can go buy a couple of sheets. I usually buy those already cut. I can't find it in a 4x8 foot sheet. My local home center, which is where I get the stuff, Home Depot, they only carry it in cut sheets, the 1/4-inch stuff, which is the Baltic birch ply. So I usually buy it, I buy 2x4 sheets of Baltic birch ply, and I think that they're usually about $15 a piece, which is, I mean, it's more than you would spend if you bought a 4x8 foot sheet. 4x8 foot should cost you maybe $50, 45 to $50. You're paying almost double that for the smaller sheets. And I get it. I mean, you know, buy in bulk. But unfortunately, they don't carry the large sheets. If they did, I would buy one, have them cut it twice, and then I would have 4 sheets to use. They don't, so I'll buy a couple of sheets of that, and that will be more than enough wood to get me base bottoms for all of these, and we can move forward with that. So aside from that, I was digging in my stuff over here as I was cutting wood down. I was getting all these extra pieces of wood. Let me show you over here on the side. If you look over here, right over here, there is a bunch of wood sitting there. And this is where my I hate to throw wood away thing, mind goes crazy. Like, I hate throwing wood away because I can use it for different things. And my thought here is I'm going to make some, I call them cheese boards, but there's also, you can call them a charcuterie board. And my thought is I want to make some charcuterie boards. I don't know if any of you have ever made a charcuterie board, but I thought, you know, Christmas is coming up. I could make some, the nice thing about the charcuterie boards is that they're not cutting boards. So where I would always try to use end grain for my cutting boards, because I think end grain cutting boards are just better for boards that actually get cut on. They just last longer. They don't get scarred and marred and damaged. They are better for your food because you're not cutting the fibers and allowing places for bacteria to grow. They're just better solutions overall. So I don't like long grain cutting boards. I never have. They just end up, after you use them, they end up looking terrible because they get scratches and scars, and you can't fix that unless you sand it down. But on a charcuterie board, it's basically a serving tray. And they're usually long and thin, and they're made out of all kinds of different things. A lot of people will use live edge boards for charcuterie boards, and they'll cut patterns and such. So my thought is I'm going to make 2 or 3, depending on what I can get out of my scraps over there. Just line them up. And the other thing is they're usually thin. They're usually only about, I don't know, 5 inches wide or so. So I will take my boards over there, cut them down to appropriate widths, and try to get everything within about the same height, and do some glue ups on those and turn those into some charcuterie boards. I'll do maybe a little pattern on there to cut it out. And then I was thinking, depending on who I give them to, I could put them on the CNC machine, maybe carve a last name in there and fill it with epoxy. That would be kind of cool. And yeah, so I think I'm going to do that with the scraps, and that's why that pile of wood is sitting there, because I was assessing what I've got and thinking, okay, how many charcuterie boards could I get out of this? At least 2, maybe 3. I think I can get 3 out of there. If I jump into my wood piles, and actually I have more wood stacked around, I could probably find enough boards to cut strips to add in, or do some wide boards, feed some wide boards in there as well. It doesn't, you can mix it up when you're doing stuff like this. You can mix it up and have different colors. I've got some really cool, like I've got this long strip of Padauk right here, which adds some really cool color to it. I've got some walnut here. I've got some sapele. I got a lot of sapele. I've got cherry. I've got some of this Jatoba that would be kind of interesting. So I've got a bunch of different woods. I've got some maple, and to me, it's like, you know, a little variety in there. So I'm going to probably work on that. We're in November, so I need to get those moving, because I need to, if I'm going to use this for Christmas presents, which I am, I think, I don't want to be running up against the clock. So I will start working on a little Christmas present-y action here coming up soon, and hopefully nobody who's going to get one will be watching, because I might do some of that on the stream. Oh, coffee good. Okay, what do I got going on here? I think my CNC is running. I do not need that right now, so I'm going to turn that off. Maybe, if I can find the switch. There we go, that's nice and quiet. What I do need to do is move all of this wood that I was assessing for charcuterie boards. I need to get all this off of my table saw. And I'm just going to stack it over here. I actually have a pretty good supply of wood for making some more bases and stuff. I've got a big old 12-inch wide piece of white oak down here. I've got some walnut. I've got a couple of big cherry boards. So I've got plenty of wood for my next group of bases when I get around to them. It's just my standard stuff. But for right now, I want to get stuff cut and done for this group, which means I need to make some room here, because it's just, things are in the way. And it's a scrap board right there. But I want to get things moving so we can get to some gluing and some joinery. So I'm going to get this out of the way, set my coffee over here with the computer. By the way, I have chat windows on all of my platforms. I stream on Twitch and YouTube and Facebook. There's a chat window, so if you are sitting there hanging around watching, please check in, say hey. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, I'm just a crazy person in here talking to myself, and, well, that's not far from reality. It makes me feel better if I think there's people here. All right. So what I'm going to do is, I've got this piece of Jatoba right here. It's already been sanded to 120, so I started at 80, then I went to 120. I mean, it's soft, but there's still, you know, some swirly scratches and stuff that need to come out. I've got the sapele and the walnut are already down to 150. So I'm going to go ahead and finish these out. This one right here, it won't take long because I have already hit it with the 2 previous grits. So I'm going to mark these with pencil, and then I'm just going to sand this one last group, and then we can take these over to the table saw and work out our joinery cuts, because we're going to have to do rabbet cuts for these. But that's okay. That won't take too long. This, let's see here. Just make sure I'm doing the right side. I just marked it up. So I am going to do a little bit of sanding. Sorry about that. I know it's not exciting to watch, but it won't take long because, like I said, these have already been done to 120, so the 150 will just take a couple of minutes to get done. And I tried to get all this done before the stream this morning, but I didn't have time. I mean, I kind of ran out of time because I was sanding and such, but then I have to do all the setup to get the stream ready. And believe it or not, it takes a little bit of work to get a live stream set up and running, because I have to get all the cameras set up and the lights and do all the stuff for the computer. And it takes me about 20 to 25 minutes to get everything set up for the live stream. So I didn't have time to finish this one set, but it won't take long to knock that out. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get this. I've got, I'm going to clean this off first. This is a 150 that I've been using. The dogs are barking. And then I'll go ahead and hit these 3 boards here. right, that's all she wrote for that. And they're very nice and smooth. And I did not sand the middle piece because there is a center divider. I do not sand this because I don't want to change the thickness of this. I will hit this lightly when it's that time to put it together, but I don't like to hit that heavy with the sandpaper. Anyway, these three are done. Now, there is one thing on this walnut base. So before we get moving here, I've got a couple of a couple of things on here. There's a little knot right here on this one. You can see that. And I don't want to, so it goes in about 1/4 of an inch. Well, I'm gonna route this whole thing out here so that it receives a rabbet where the bottom will fit in. So I'm not worried about this because I think that rabbet will take care of this little knot that's popped out there. What I do have on here though is a tiny little, from a knot, it's just a little tiny opening there. And I think what I want to do is get my black CA glue and just fill that with a little black CA. And then I think I will pop it one more time with the sandpaper when I get ready to do, before I do the glue up on this one. But I'm just going to hit this with the CA, a little black CA, and this Instabond, which is an activator. And that should just fill this little tiny crack here, and just so there's not any openings in here. Hopefully I can get the glue to come out. There it is. But getting it to go into the holes sometimes is an issue. So I'm just going to use the lid here and try to work it into that little hole there. And it just seals it, is really all I care about, is just sealing that up a little bit. I mean, it'd be nice if it was at the same level, but it's hard sometimes to get things into little teeny cracks. Sometimes I'll use like a toothpick or whatever to put the stuff in there because you can kind of get into the crack a little bit better. But I think put one more drop up on top. And then what I'm going to do is leave this sit. I'm going to hit it with the activator right here. And what that does is it creates a chemical reaction which instantly crystallizes and cures the CA. I mean, that's right there. It doesn't come off on my finger now. It's the stuff on top is done. The stuff on the inside, underneath, takes a little bit longer. But the nice thing is that by the time I get ready to do that, I can hit it one more time with that 150. That stuff will flatten out nicely and it'll look good when it's all finished. But in the meantime, we can move over to the table saw and we can start working on cutting our joinery for these. Now, the nice thing is that these are going to get a 1/2 inch, rabbet on the joints. So let me grab this one right here because this one we can work with right now. I can put these up here. So we can basically cut that 1/2 inch deep on the on each end of this to create that rabbet. But I need to make sure that I get this a 1/2 inch deep. So I have to get my tools here and I have to reestablish this because I've used this saw for other things. I changed it from when we did the zebra wood, and it is now a little taller than a 1/2 inch, I think. So I'm going to need to make a couple of test cuts. I don't need this big boy right now, but I'm going to need to make a couple of test cuts to establish the height and get it the exact height that I need. I'm going to move this fence over. There we go. And to do that, I'm going to need a piece of scrap wood that this, I did do a test on this one. This one was set up previously on the zebra wood. So this piece of wood got cut to a 1/2 inch. I don't want to use this piece of wood again because I don't want to confuse myself with what's already been done. So let me grab another piece of scrap here and we can do another test. And all I'm going to do is cut a pass off the end and then measure to see that I'm at a 1/2 inch deep with my blade. I can move this over here. That will help. There we go. All right, and I'm going to move my dust collection over to the table saw. That also will help keep things from getting too dusty, dirty in here. Let's see what's going on. I can put this, let me put this away for the moment. We'll pull it back out in a minute. And let me suck down the last of this coffee. Yum. All right, I'm just going to make a test cut here, and I'm going to turn my heater off so I don't blow a fuse. So we're going to make one test cut right off the end of this board, and then I will measure that with the my little market that's set to a 1/2 inch. So this scale is extended so that the space from this blue section here to the end of the scale is 1/2 inch, and I set that with my caliper so I know it's exact. And I need my ears. Hang on a second. Pardon me, I'm a little sniffy this morning. I'm not sure why, but just am. That's all we're doing is one simple cut. Ooh, that seems like pretty deep. That's way deep. How did I figure that as a 1/2 inch? Where did I get that figuring out? Oh, I went off the wrong edge. My bad. There's another edge right here to this thing. So there's two edges. I wanted this edge. So that was not good. Not good at all. So I will have to redo this. Here we go. That is closer to what we need. Let's try this again. I'm just going to cut another, let's cut it off of this end. It doesn't really matter. Although I do like to do the end of the board. So let me grab another board with an end that I can use. There we go. Good scraps. All right. Let's try this again. Wow, that was a really deep cut. All right, this is, I'm looking to see if there's any daylight between the end of the measure and the wood, or if there's any space between this shelf right here and this back of the wood, and I am super perfect. That's a word, right? Super perfect. Okay, so now I am able to cut my joinery, and I'm going to need to make those cuts on the end of each of these boards. So both of these will get those cuts. I have already marked an F on this one and a B on this one, so I know where my face is, and I know where my back is. So this will be the front of the base, this will be the back of the base, and I keep an eye on those because I need to make sure that I have them marked and don't get confused. So now what I need to do is use one of my end pieces like this, and I'm going to go way over here and get my pencil and mark the end of that board so I know exactly where this cut is going to take place. Let me get a lead out here. And that's good. So I will mark this one right here. Mark the edges, and then I don't want to flip the board over because that would be cutting on the wrong side. So I'm going to turn it And then I'll cut this side. Because I can't see this mark, I have to rotate the board like that so that I get a mark on each end on the opposite side of the board that allows me to see it while I'm making the cut. So what I mean is, when the board is in this orientation to cut this one, well, I can't put the mark on this end because that's not the side. I have to flip the board around this way to cut it. So I need to, there's a mark on this side and this side. They're just same space, but they're kind of, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. All right, I'm going to line this up with my pencil mark I just made, and we're going to cut this out. I start on the inside because that's the one that is most critical, and then I'll work my way out and clean out the rest of the wood here. Okay, so that is the back done. So you can see we've got a nice rabbit cut right here, another nice rabbit cut right here, and it's on the same side of the board. Always important. I managed to knock the board off. We're gonna have to measure this one. What time is it? Okay, I have to take one quick break. I will be right back. But you know, I have a son who tends to oversleep and doesn't get up for work. So give me just a minute, I'll be right back. Of course, he has a overprotective dad who forgets that he actually does get a day off every now and then, which would be today. And so, yeah, it's his day off. I don't need to wake him. So I will not make sure this is the face. So we cut the right place here. And because these are sanded, once I get all the joinery done, we can just slap some glue. I got some loose fibers here. I'm going to clean those off with a little sandpaper. The one thing I found on this Jatoba wood, which is really, really, really hard wood, but it is a little splintery on some of the cuts. So it's good to use something that has a supportive feature to it. And what I mean by that is, like on this backer board here, the reason I use this is because this wood surrounding that cut was exactly through there, and the edges of this piece of wood support the wood fibers on the back of the cut and keep them from tearing out. That's what they tell me. No, I'm just kidding. It actually does work that way. All right, so I'm going to line this one up here. And we'll cut this one out. Okay, so I've got the ends cut for these, right? So these now have their little cuts on each end. So now what I need to do is find my front. And it goes like this. And then my back. So the letter B. I'll put these against here. I need to measure out the inside of this to find my next cut, because this is going to be a dado cut that goes in the middle of the board, and that is in a specific location. So first thing I'm going to do is measure this to make sure I'm working with the right size base. So I've got 18.5 inches. So on that 18.5 inch base, this is for my smaller 3/4 machines, I need to have a dado cut that starts 12.25 inches from the inside. So from the inside of this cut right here, it needs to be 12.25 inches this way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up and mark 12.25 inches on here. And then I will come back and make sure I get exactly 12.25 inches on here. So what I'm going to do is flip these around. And make a mark on here using this. So I get a nice square to the face. I'm just going to mark this as the first cut. We're going to cut another one. So what I'll do is I'll take my middle board, which is the one that has no handle on it, and I will draw a line using that as a guide, because that's how wide this dado cut needs to be. There we go. So now I have my dado marked on each piece, and I'm just going to, once again, I'm just going to kind of draw that little line across the back and fill this in so I know exactly where that cut needs to take place. It's just a visual reminder to me so that, you know, if for whatever reason something distracts me and I come back, I know exactly where I'm supposed to cut. All right. And this one also very, need to move this over a little bit, very exact, very precise when we make this cut. And we want to make sure that we don't make it too wide. So what I'll do is I'll clear out the majority of the waste in here, and then I'll get it close, and then I'll come back and just use this board to test fit as I'm going and just sneaking up on it a little bit because I don't want to go too wide. If it gets too big, that's no bueno. Oh, almost. Too much. Too fucking much. Okay. All right. So there's our dado cut right there. It's a pretty good one. It's a little loose. You can see I just kind of went a little too far with it, but it's still okay. And I can probably hit it with a little sawdust and stuff. Plus, when you use your glue to make the joint, it will, take up some of that space. But I knew when I did that last cut, I was like, oh, it's just a little too much. All right, let's do this next one. So this one, much better. See, not barely any wiggle room there. So this one turned out much better. And then what I will do is I will just put this together and check just to make sure it looks all good. That. And there we go. So that is basically the construction, the joinery cuts for this base. And the other ones will be similar, the only difference being that they're different sizes. So this one, while it's made for a smaller size machine, excuse me, I think the other two are made for a more standard machine. So what I'm going to do is just take all of this stuff and put it together and set this off to the side. And let's grab the sapele one, because I want to save the walnut one for last because I want to hit that with the sandpaper, and I'm just going to give it a chance to really set up and cure before I do that. Just checking the phone real quick. Okay. So same story, identify my front and the back. I've got a B here for the back, an F on here for the front. You probably can't see that, maybe you can. But that lets me know which face goes downward. And then because we're using the same, this is the nice thing about doing these, it's a half an inch. That translates to all the bases. That's the measurement that does not change. So all I have to do is mark my my faces here, or the ends, I'm sorry, with my, using that board as a guide. and then flip it around and do the same thing over here. But that is the nice thing, and that's why, like I said, I like to batch things, because you know, you've got tools set up like this that once you get it set up, you can do a whole bunch of them the same way. And then it's just a matter of marking and making cuts, and you don't have to do a setup every time you're doing one because it uses the same measurement. So it makes for some good, I mean, it's repetitious, but I'd rather set a tool up once and make a lot of cuts than have to set it up each time for each machine. That's not fun. All right, get this one lined up here, and I'm just lining that mark up right on my outer facing tooth of my saw, so I know that's where my first cut is. All right, and we got those cuts made. So let me find the front, back, get my orientations correct, and we will measure this. Now this should be a longer base. This should be 21 inches long. It is. So my interior measurement from what would be the inside of this wall to that divider should be 14 3/4. And it is. I just want to check my measurement. Don't want to screw it up. So I'm just going to make a mark here to start with at 14 3/4. And then I'm going to flip this board over right here so that I can get that mark perfect on both of them. here. And then I will once again use that board that is going to go in the middle, put that right against my ruler. I don't move my ruler at all. Keep that square right where it is and let this push up against it, and that gives me my spacing for the dado. Good. These pieces aren't going to get used. I am going to use this to check my dado cut, so I need to keep that out and just mark my waste, my removal. Okay, time to make a dado. Once again, lining this up with the interior. That inside is the most important measurement because that 14 3/4 inches from where this piece goes and where this piece starts, that's a critical measurement because that's where the machine fits. I don't care how wide the storage space is, if it's, you know, 1/4 of an inch off or whatever from my plans, that doesn't matter. What matters is the interior space from here to here, because that has to be 14 3/4 inches because that's the space I need to accommodate for that machine that's going to go in there. That's the critical measurement. Okay, that one. Whew. There's a tiny bit of wiggle room. You have to remember that I don't want this to be so tight that it fits, but I don't have room for glue. Room takes space. So this one, even though it's a tight fit, you can see that it popped out. Like I can slide it in here like this, and then it easily pops out. So it's not super tight, but it is tight enough. That's the back. It's tight enough that it will give me a nice fit, but allow a little bit of space for glue, which is what you want. All right, this one right there. Okay. There we go. I mean, if I put that in the dado, there's a little wiggle room right there. You can see it wiggles just a little bit, but that's okay. Like I said, we're good with that. Front. And that one's a little tight. I actually might come back and change this one. If I, these boards might be like a couple of thou difference on each end. But the other thing is I haven't sanded this board yet. Yeah, that's a little tight. So I'm gonna do this one just a little bit more, and let me keep this end here so I can use that to measure. But because I don't want to chip out, that's the other thing. These boards are, you know, they're milled, but they might be a little bit of like 1,000th off or 2,000th, and that makes a difference. All right, that's better. I think this is the back. So yeah, so if I use one end to check the dado and then I go to stick the other end in there, it's too tight. It's because, well, this board was just a little tiny bit thicker on one end than the other. But I'm just going to check my fit here. So, and on this one, there we go. All together, nice. And this will glue up well. So that looks like that. All right, and it's kind of the same process over and over again. All right, before we get to the last one, which is the walnut base, we need to come over to the table over here to the bench, and I'm going to need to sand that down real quick. Let me pull off my dust collection here and hook it up to the sander. This will just take a moment, but it will make a big difference in that board. So we're over here. Actually, I'll go to this one. And I just want to sand off the CA glue, which is nice and hard now. And you can see there's the CA right there. So when I hit this with, I think the 150 should be fine. I'm just going to put it like this. It should be nice and easy. Let me clean this off a little bit. I'm going to turn the fan on, clean this off, and then run it over that spot. Honestly, that's all it took, was just that little bit of sanding. But I can tell you what, the difference between having that little crack in there and having it filled, huge. So here's, now you can see that little knot, and it looks just like it belongs. So when I hit this with the oil and stuff, it'll just look like a dark spot in the middle of the wood. And the other thing is, this is the interior of the box. So this is not on the outside. I went ahead, I've got a couple of small ones that I will do the same thing on the outside, but they're really small. And I decided to use the really small ones on the outside and the slightly larger one on the inside. I just thought it would look better that way. But now we can take this over to table saw and get these last joints cut and move on from there. No one's in the chat today. It's very quiet in here, except for the sound of my own voice. Some people say that's the way I prefer it. It's not true, man. I like other people being around. All right, I know where the front is on this one, but I need to figure out which way the back is going to go. I think it's going to go this way, so I'm going to draw a big B on here, just so I can identify the back of this base. So I just drew a big letter B on there. Hopefully you can see that. I don't know if you can see it or not, but anyway, letter B right there. The face is easy to identify because it has the carving in it. So I just keep the carving face up and we're good. So what I need to do is get one of these and we're going to mark our edges that need to get done. Get my pencil. And mark the appropriate, I hate the walnut though, in terms of the pencil. Very hard to see those pencil lines on walnut. You have to get the light at the right angle to view the pencil lines on here. It's kind of a pain in the rear. Kind of a pain in the tush. But we'll just have to do what we have to do. All right. It's the back, right? Yeah. So the thing is, when you're marking these edges for these rabbit cuts, you always want to have the outer surface should always be facing you when you're marking. So it should always be up when you're cutting and facing you when you're marking. So I rotate it this way. The back of the board is facing me, or the outer face is facing me. This will be the inside of the box. So I can make this mark here. So, and then when we cut it, we always want that outer face being up. So for us, we want this outer face, the B, to be staring us in the face as we line up this cut. There. Okay, let's get this going. Dust collection is hooked up, and we're off. check this last one just to make sure that it's width-wise it's good, and it is. I'm going to need this middle one. Okay, we're going to get this lined up here to make front and our backs. Never quite the way this should be right there. Right there. Okay. Now, I'm not sure why this board is just a tiny bit taller than this board, and it really shouldn't be. So when I get done with this, I'm going to trim this down. I don't want to change my blade height until I get this last one cut. But it's just a little taller, and I'm not, because they were two different boards, so they were cut from at different times, and I think that's probably what. No, I don't know why. Anyway, is what it is. This one, just a tiny bit taller, so I will trim that down in a minute. But I don't want to do that until I get this measurement done. I don't even need this to do the measurement on here. I keep thinking that this should be 21. This is 21 inches, so 14 3/4 on this interior space. 14 3/4. And then I will get these lined up. Now this is where it gets a little weird though, because my ruler doesn't necessarily want to fit across here. Heights, but we'll make do. This is fine. Take this board and put it across here. Okay. Do our dado cuts, and then I'll trim this thing down to size before we glue it, because I don't want it to be off, because then I'd have to do a lot of work with a hand plane to true it up after the fact, and I don't want to do that. I'd rather not, when I can just zip it through the, I'll set the width to the shorter board or the less wide board, and we'll just trim a little bit of fat off of this back piece here, and that should be sufficient. All right, let's line this puppy up and make our cuts. Is that right? There. Oh, wait. There we go. Yep. See, I tell you, man, you get confused sometimes. Yeah. I was like looking at it going, oh, wait, I did it on the wrong. Oh, no, but I didn't. You can get confused. You can get really confused when you're doing these cuts. So that's why I say just take your time and mark your front and your back, make your surfaces right. And even though you think it's wrong, when you get done, you'll see that you were right and you were just confused while you were working, because that's what just happened to me. But I'm right, so we're good. Now, I'll tell you what, if you don't have a zero clearance blade guard, get yourself a zero clearance, because doing things like that where you're just basically moving things over, you need to have an edge reference to go by. And if you've just got a wide slot around your blade, you've got no reference to line up to. So, all right, I need to trim this board up here. I mean, these fit, so you can see that's good, but it fits and it's tall, so it's kind of weird, right? It's also, there we go. So this is quite tall here. I'm not sure why, but it's a tall piece of wood, so we need to trim this one down. So I'm going to go ahead. That's all of these. I have these others to do, but I can reset this 1/2 inch size. But right now, what I want to do is just set my fence. Get rid of this. I'm going to set my fence to the width of this piece right here, so that, and I need to raise the blade up, but I want this to be size for this other one. So it's easier if we just nudge it, and that should give me just that size. That's off a little bit. That should be perfect. Because I noticed that these were the same issue. I mean, they weren't just, these are perfect size. It's just this one board, for whatever reason, just not. Let me check to see if they're square. So it doesn't matter which side I put against the fence to take off. And I'm going to run it through this way. I think is the best way for me to do it. And I'm already set up with this, so we will run it. That was odd that it was that way, but it didn't take much to fix it. So, and that's, what all we care about is making sure that we can, oh, this one's tight now. Oh, let's try it on this side. Yeah. See this board, a little bit looser on this side. But anyway, these now fit pretty well here. Pretty good. Are these exactly the same size? Let me check. Yeah, I think we're good. I'm just going to check to make sure that we're all in good shape here. This, and there we go. There's another one. All right, now I can take these ears off my head because, wow, I've been wearing them for a while. And hey, look, oh my gosh, look at all these people dumped in on me over on Twitch. Good Lord. Wow. So who we've got over here? I'm sorry, gang. I was busy and didn't see you, but wow. You raided my party. Fish Stalker TV raided my party. That's awesome. Thank you, Fish Stalker TV, for the raid. Hey, everybody. So welcome to the. Well, here's the thing. I can't check the feed and cut wood at the same time. It's just one of those things that is very scary to do. So I try to concentrate when I'm using things that can, like, give me the nickname Lefty. I try not to watch my stream, but I am dumping boards off the end. So let me pick that up. What I do want to do though is pull a finished set out of clamps over here. And so these are all ready to be glued up now. I've got 3 of these. That's what you're seeing in front of you here. These 3 sets are now, all the joinery is done, the joinery cuts, and they're now ready to be glued up. But I have a couple that were already in clamps. So let me switch back here and I'm going to pull those out. And you can see this is very cool. So this is zebra wood. I made these the other day. So these two bases that I have here are already finished gluing. I did these on my stream on Monday. Whoops. And I don't have an infinite number of these long clamps, so I can only glue up like 3 of these bases at a time. This is not glued in place. It was just there to hold the space. So when I put the clamps this way, it tends to want to bow the wood. So I put this center divider piece, it's going to go in there eventually. So I put it in there and then clamp it, and that holds the board straight and just keeps them going. But this is zebra wood, which is very cool. And then I've got one more. So we set this aside. Things are going to come crashing down, I know. I've got one more of them that is a shorter one. So that's what I call my standard size base with a storage compartment on the side. I make a regular base that has no storage compartment. And that one looks like this. And what I do is once I get that joinery done that you just saw me cutting, then I will go ahead and get the glue and put them into clamps. And I usually let them sit for at least a day, or at least, you know, overnight anyway, depending on what I'm doing. But at least overnight, I'll let them sit in the clamps, and that way they get nice and sturdy. But you can see these have hand grips on the side. They will get a bottom put in there. They will get little triangles put in the corners for the machine to set on, and then you've got a new base for your sewing machine. So that's kind of my deal. That's what I do here. I do sewing machine bases 90% of the time because there's just a market for it, and there's not a lot of people who fulfill it. Let me check. I'm just going to read through some comments here and stuff just to make sure there's no questions. So one of these I actually do. So all these handles that you see right here, these are all cut on my CNC machine. I basically put the two pieces of wood together. So when it goes in the machine, it sits flat like this. And then I carve a pocket. It's what we call a pocket. So that pocket then looks like this when it's done carving. And when you pull them apart, you've got 2 handles that go on the sides. So I do that on the CNC machine. I used to do it with a router table. Now I do it with the CNC machine because it's so much easier. And then, depending, sometimes I will do a fancy carving like this. So that is like the Singer sewing machine logo, the old Singer sewing machine logo. And then I do some fancy flourishes on the side or whatever. But it looks really cool when it's all done. People seem to like it, so I keep doing it. And yeah, so I do that on the CNC machine. I don't usually do those on, so CNC computer is basically hang on. It is this machine behind me right here. That's what the computer's hooked up to. It's basically a computer controlled router, and you can basically put a design in and it will carve depending on the bit that you have in the router. You can do very decorative things. You can make large cuts, and it has an X, Y, and a Z axis. So it'll carve in 3 directions. It'll do side to side, back and forth, and up and down. So you can do really cool carvings like this. But you can also cut pieces of wood out. I use it to flatten cutting boards that I make, cut out patterns, do all kinds of. CNC machine is so useful in the shop. It is kind of like, okay, so a 3D printer, is it like a 3D printer? Kind of like a 3D printer. A 3D printer is additive, whereas a CNC machine is subtractive. So for 3D printer, you're adding material to create something. CNC machine, you're removing material to create something. So that's kind of the difference there. But it's, yeah, CNC, computer numeric controlled, something like that. Some people say it's not woodworking. I say, I'm using it to cut wood. It's woodworking. What am I going to do now? Oh, so now I've got these out. These I didn't do logos in this. This is, like I said, this is zebra wood. Zebra wood, very expensive. This stuff is, what did I say, $19 a board foot, which is how rough lumber is calculated, is by the board foot. And so I think the board that I had for this one was maybe 5 inches wide, and not sure exactly how long. I think it was about 6 feet long, and it was like almost $80 for that board. So this stuff is really, really expensive. It's very an exotic wood, but most of the stuff I'm working with this time around for this next round of bases that I'm making are all exotic wood. So this is Jatoba, which is one of the hardest woods that you can buy. There's a few more, but this is really at the high end of the hardness scale. It's also referred to as Brazilian cherry. This is sapele. So this stuff is really cool. It's quarter sawn, so you get these really cool like ribbon patterns in there. Let me get on this camera right here. So you can see it has these kind of ribbon patterns in there. So that's sapele. Very cool stuff. Walnut, which, you know, everybody knows walnut. Walnut is expensive, but it's very awesome to work with. Does the wood last long? Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. So anything you make out of wood, if you don't treat it, and depending on the environment you put it in and the way that you top coat it, the protection you give it, really has a bearing on how long that will last. If you take a piece of wooden furniture and you stick it outside in the elements, and you don't put any stain and any polyurethane or anything on top of it, depending on the wood, it's not going to last very long, right? But if you've got it inside your house, like a piece of furniture, and you have let the wood dry, and you've done a really good job on your joinery and your glue job, and you put a really nice protective finish on it, like I finish most of mine in an oil base or a lacquer based finish, it'll last for 100 years, I mean, or more. So it really should. Yeah, and here's the thing. Exotic wood just means it didn't come from my country for the most part. So anything I say exotic, it's woods that are coming from Central and South America and Africa. That's where most of the exotic woods come from. They're not readily available. North America has, I don't know, 120 species of hardwoods, but of that, there's like 5 or 6 main hardwoods that woodworkers use for making stuff. Walnut is expensive, but it's not exotic. But you've got cherry, oak, which red oak and white oak. You've got hickory, pine, which is a softwood, not a hardwood. So anyway, there's anything typically that comes from a land far away. There are some exotics that come from Australia or whatever, but I guess it depends on where you live, right? So if you live in Brazil, none of that's exotic. It's just what's in the woods next door. But when you're here, that stuff's exotic. Sapele actually grows in the U.S., but it's more of it's kind of in that walnut family. So sapele is actually in the mahogany family, of which there are, I don't know, 170 actual mahogany species. But the ones that most people are familiar with, there's about 5 or 6 of them. There's what's called genuine mahogany. There's Santos. Well, actually Santos doesn't count, but there's Honduran mahogany, which oddly enough doesn't come from Honduras anymore. They don't harvest it, but you can buy Honduran mahogany, which is basically this species of tree which is available throughout. But this species actually does grow in the U.S. and it is in the mahogany family. So anyway, that's your wood 101 for the day. What am I going to do here? Oh, so now it's time to play like it's elementary school and do some gluing. But I like doing gluing. I like to get the stuff in the clamps and get it going because that gives me, I'm going to put the saw blade down and I don't even have my screen changed. Sorry about that. There we go. All right. So the question for you all, the channel that you rated me from, which is Fish Stalker TV, what subject matter is that? What kind of stream is that? Just curious, for no other reason than I haven't heard of that one. So. Let's see, I gotta get all these things lined up the right way. You know, the cool thing about Twitch, which I also stream, this same stream goes out on my YouTube channel and it goes out on Facebook. But the really cool thing that about spicy stuff, oh nice, spicy stuff. The thing I really like about Twitch is the raid feature, that you don't get that from any other streaming platform. Nobody else has that, where you can take people watching your streams and say, all right, I'm done, but go check this one out and dump people into that stream. And it's a great discovery kind of thing. You stalk fish, IRL fishing. So basically he's just fishing like on the edges of a bank and fishing, because that's kind of cool. I actually love to fish, even though I haven't been fishing in a lot of years. I used to go fishing all the time. It's amazing the things you stop doing when you have children, right? The hair fish is pain. Sometimes a boat too. I don't know how. I've seen a few streams where like, what was it? Like the guys who are out, I don't know if you've watched them, like they're doing metal detecting, right? And they're live streaming, they're metal detecting. And all I can say is they must have some really good cell service to be able to stream from, I guess, from their phone is what they're doing, and be able to support a stream while they are out in the wilds, to lack of a better word. But like I know where I live, I wouldn't be able to support a stream on my phone. That is for darn sure, because there's just not the Wi-Fi service or the internet service here for a phone. Yeah, and that would be my thing. Now I'm like, I have a computer in my shop which is hooked to my Wi-Fi, and which is right on the other side of the wall. So I usually don't have that problem. I get pretty good signal here in my garage, which is why I can support streaming to 3 different channels at the same time too. But yeah, I don't know how anybody, because I see guys also, like I've seen other streams where guys are out on their bike, like doing cross-country biking and stuff. I'm like, how in the heck can you actually do that and get a good signal? Which I know sometimes they're not great, but still it's pretty impressive, I think. Anyway, I'm going to glue these joints up, and they're really simple to do. These are just what we call rabbet joints, where it's basically just a little shelf cut in here, and these end pieces will fit inside there. And the big thing is I want to get glue on both edges, so there's a wide surface and a narrow surface, and I get the glue on both sides. I got to make sure my handle is down and facing out. And same with this one. And I just fit it together. And then the handle here facing out. And then you want to make sure that these two dado grooves right here are facing each other. I have glued them together where I've had one down here and one here because I wasn't paying attention. That is a bad day because that means you just created a really pretty piece of firewood. Because there's really no way to save it after that once it glues up. All right. And so all I'm doing here is putting a clamp in to hold. So I use my table saw. I've got a cast iron table here on my table saw, which is really super flat. And so I use that to keep all of my boards flat as I glue them and I get them set in the clamps, because that will save me time down the road, because when I get these out of the clamps, if they didn't glue up flat on the bottom side, then I have to go and flatten them with a hand plane and such, which is kind of a pain. So I'd like to make sure all the boards are flat. And all I'm doing is putting pressure in so I can lift them onto the long clamps. Okay, I don't know what a death nut challenge is. You'll have to explain a death nut challenge to me because I don't know that one. He did the death nut challenge. I do not know of death nuts. I used to have a boat. I used to go fishing all the time. I'm kind of near the Potomac River. So I would go out on the Potomac River and bass fish for hours and hours and hours because I love bass fishing. But I haven't been in a few years, sadly. Get this clamp on here. Big pain. What is the death nut challenge? Now I got to know what the death nut challenge is now. I really don't have any clue what that is, but it sounds horrible. All right, I'm going to use these are parallel clamps. They're my Bessie parallel clamps. So as I turn the handle here, what happens is they give even pressure coming in. They don't cant one way or the other. They should give me nice even pressure. And once I get those clamped up and I start seeing squeeze out here, then I can readjust these clamps to get nice pressure from the sides. And basically what I'm trying to do is get clamping pressure from the two different directions. Like that. There we go. And the other thing I need to do is put this board in here. I'm not going to glue this in. I'm just going to put it in here because if I take my square and I check this out, what happens, actually this is pretty, yeah. So what happens is this board kind of bows out a little bit because of the pressure. And what I will do is stick this in here. If I can get it to stick in there. Here we go this way. There we go. And then I put a clamp across here just to hold the boards in. And it keeps them straight and in line so as the glue dries. Because as I push this way, it's kind of trying to buckle the wood out. So because this is a really long piece of wood. So I just put this on there, holds the board straight. And the important thing is to have really straight corners, because you're going to be putting a machine in here, or someone is, and I want them to have a nice straight thing going on here. So anyway, now I can stick this over on the floor and let the glue dry, and I will move to the next one. So this is really all I'm doing here is super ridiculously hot, spicy nut challenge to eat many fiery hot nuts. Okay, I'm automatically tapping out on that one because I do not do spicy. That is not my forte at all. Spicy and I do not get along. I don't even eat like medium hot salsa. I cannot handle hotness. Like even mild salsa sometimes, like my eyes will start watering and like I'll start sweating and yeah. Spicy and I do not get along at all. My son has done like the pepper ghost pepper challenges and stuff, and good for him. He did lots of money for a great cause. Well, you know, I guess if you're raising money for charity, but I wouldn't raise very much money because I wouldn't get very far in the challenge. I can say that because I cannot hang with the spicy stuff. Why is that mark on the board? So you all missed the exciting part of my stream, which is me sanding the insides of these bases because I can't do it once they're assembled. So I sanded the insides of these things, which makes for some quality TV, I can tell you. Just hot action with the sander. Unfortunately, and it's kind of a reality of this kind of stuff, you know, when you're watching YouTube videos, you never get to see all the good stuff that goes on behind the scenes. They always have these beautifully edited, you know, final versions of everything, which I make YouTube videos as well, but you don't get to see all the good stuff, which is like the hours that you spend sanding and stuff like that. So when I'm live streaming, I don't cut out the boring stuff because you really can't. You know, you kind of have to keep things moving. So you get all the goodness on my stream. All of the boring stuff in one place. You don't even have to go looking for it. It's right here. All right. So I've got a handle right here. You see that handle? Yeah, you can see it. So there's a handle there. I've got the handle here facing out. And I've got my slot right here facing each other. All right. And just another set of clamps to hold it in place. Like I said, the big thing is I make sure all these boards are pressed down on my cast iron table just to get things set in place. I don't have to do hard pressure, just enough to hold those boards together and keep them flat while I get them set into the bigger clamps. All right, and move this set over. And I actually have one more large set of clamps so I can glue up one more base. And then I can kind of talk about what I'm going to do next on these. I can kind of set up for my next stuff. But let me get this done. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So basically what happens is when I get these glued up and set into their final form, which is this box, then what I will do is I start routing out the bottoms of them to put a bottom into the box, because right now it's just a box with sides, no bottom. I need to grab a long clamp here. I kind of run out of clamp. It's kind of a pain in the rear, but I just need something to hold this in. There we go. And I'm going to reset these clamps. But anyway, so what I do is I do a route on my router table around the inside of the bottom of the box, and it creates a shelf that runs around the perimeter, and that shelf gets a piece of plywood, a little 1/4-inch piece of plywood put in it that creates the bottom of the box. All right, one more to go. Let me grab this one. And do you all actually know what I'm making? I've said it, but I don't know if you know exactly what it is that I'm making. So if you're not familiar, there are a ton of people who use and collect antique sewing machines, probably the most popular of which are the old Singer sewing machines. And they made millions of those things. But the problem is that sometimes they were either in tables, which were either treadle tables, or sometimes they had motors, but they would be in a sewing table, or they were in boxes or bases that had like bent wood. I'll show you a bent wood. I've got one right here. So this is this is a bent wood top that would be on a top of a sewing machine. And actually, if you look, this one actually probably would fit about right on top of this one, because it's made for a machine that is about the same size as this. So it would go on here, but this one's missing an end. I have to put an end. This is for a friend. I'm going to put it into it. But anyway, so this is a bent wood top that would go on top of the base that they had. And over time, these things being, you know, probably some of them in their, oh God, that had all kinds of dust on it. Some of them are 70, 80, up to over 100 years old. And some of the wood stuff doesn't quite last that long, or has been abused over time. A lot of this stuff, you know, it's like sat in grandma's attic or got put out on the back porch and got water damage or whatever. And the machines are fine, but the tables and the bases, not so much. So what I do is I make replacement bases for them, either to use for sewing or as a display for their machine. My wife is a collector, which is how I got into this. I didn't just like come up with the idea. My wife collects, and so she's like, you know, if you want to make something useful, you could make sewing machine bases, because there's a lot of people who need them, and there's not many people who make them. And I was like, well, I can do that. So I did some research, kind of found out what I needed to do, did some measurements, came up with my design, which is really close to the traditional designs, and started making them, and people started buying them. So I was not unhappy with that, because the thing is, like, I could just make cutting boards, right? But there are a ton of people making cutting boards out there in the world, and being able to be a successful cutting board manufacturer, maker, you have to have something pretty special that you're making. Like, there's a couple people who make amazing cutting boards, but I'm not one of them. So this is my little area of the world. Yeah, so basically I found my little niche. There's not a lot of people making these. There's a demand for them. And that's kind of like your dream if you're somebody making a product, right? Or if you're a maker trying to sell stuff. Now, I don't need to sell stuff. This is basically a hobby for me. I'm retired. I'm one of those lucky people who have already had a career, and so now I just do this for fun, and it keeps me in tools and toys and pays for my wood for other projects and stuff. So I just use this to fund my mad money supply, basically. But it keeps like I said, it keeps me from having to spend money on wood and stuff that I would normally have to come out of my own pocket. But I can sell these things and pay for lots of stuff. Like, I bought 2 bikes this year, and I've bought some new tools and stuff like that. So yeah, it's nice to have something that helps pay for things. All right, this last one. Did I get yeah, I got my long clamps. So it's nice to have a hobby that pays for itself, you know what I mean? It's like fishing's a great hobby, but it doesn't pay for itself. And like when you have a boat It's basically you open the hatch and throw your money in because you don't get any money back out of fishing, usually. What was my career was not even related to what I do now. So you can ask what my career was. That's no big secret. So I actually worked for the government. I was a forensic photographer who worked at the FBI laboratory for 35 years. Well, most of my career was at the laboratory, and did work with forensic scientists and did stuff at crime scenes, and then I was a supervisor of other forensic photographers for basically the second half of my career. So first half was in the lab and field work, and the second half was more management. But it was a really cool career. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun doing what I did. There's not a lot of people who can make a career in photography. And I always tell people, they're like, oh, I want to be a photographer, and what advice can you tell me? And I'm like, don't be a photographer, because everybody's a photographer now. And it's really hard to make a living as a photographer now. Unless you find some niche applications like I did, like the law enforcement. But my father was actually an FBI agent, so kind of a easy progression for me to go into that line of work. But I didn't want to be an agent necessarily. I just enjoyed what I did. I worked with some amazingly smart people, and we did some really good work, and I had a full career, and now I do this. But yeah, photography is a hard career to really do anything. If I had to do it again, I will say I would probably do something like wedding photography, because even though it's not easy to do necessarily, I'm not saying wedding photography is easy, but the tools at your disposal these days and the ability to do through social media and mass marketing, and also just creating a product and such, is so much easier than when, I used to shoot weddings on the side way back in my youth, and it was a pain. It was hard, and I used to shoot film, and that's how old I am. Don't tell anybody. But yeah, so now it's really, if you're good, you can make a decent living out of it, and you can, why is that being weird? You can really, I think, go in a lot of different directions with it. But actually what I tell people now is, don't just do photography, do multimedia. You want to be able to do video, which is huge. You want to be able to do web design. You want to make sure you're up on your social media. Make sure, there's so much more that goes into it than just taking pictures. So I always tell people, like, don't just focus on one thing. Be a master of a lot of things. And it makes life a lot easier, I think, down the road, if you've got a lot of skills and can offer a more variable package than some people can. So anyway, that's what I tell people who ask me, oh, how can I be a photographer? And I'm like, don't. Be more than just a photographer. All right. That is the last of these to go into clamps. So there we go. So these three that I've just glued up will sit for a day. And then when I get done with them, I will have three more to go into clamps. I didn't do these because I just don't have enough clamps. But so this is Padauk, which is really cool looking. Check that out. There's another exotic wood for you. Padauk, or Padauk, P-A-D-A-U-K. Never quite sure how to pronounce that. But anyway, these are smaller. These are going to be smaller bases. These go for something called a 3/4 size machine. But I've got these three. They need to be sanded on the inside and ready for glue. And I will not do that now. I'll do that on stream. But I'm going to move these off of my work table over here because we can move over to my router table, which I don't really have set up yet. I don't have a camera on it, is what I'm saying. Let me set up my camera here. On my router table, maybe. There we go. Okay. And I will switch over to here. So this is the other end of my table saw, but it's also, I've got a built-in router table to it. And I can use that. Now, it usually gets stacked up with just a lot of junk. That's just the way it is in my shop. I'm either stacking stuff or dropping stuff. But anyway, I built this router table into the end of my table saw, and it really is an awesome thing. Let's see. Yeah, nobody has physical pictures anymore. Everybody has digital photos and whatnot. I still print. I print photos. I've got a printer. And so even though, you know, it's all digital stuff, but I still like making physical prints every now and then. And I put stuff in frames, which a lot of people don't frame photos anymore. I still do, because there's just something really cool about a framed photo on the wall. And not a lot of people do it anymore. But I do. Not a lot, but every now and then I'll take like an epic trip to go somewhere just to do photography. A couple of years ago, I went to Nepal and hiked the Himalayas, and just went there just to take photos. And it was very cool. And then I've got pictures from the Himalayas up on my wall. But yeah, a lot of people don't do that anymore. They just, you know, they'll have it as a screensaver, but that's it. I'm like, well, it's kind of boring. Why bother? All right. So this is my router table. And what I'm going to do is put in a rabbiting bit, which is this thing right here. This is a rabbiting bit, which basically has a little bearing. Bring it up close so you can see. So it has a little bearing at the top right here, and then it has a straight blade. So it runs along a piece of wood, and it basically cuts a shelf. However high you have this set in the router table, it will cut a little shelf or a little lip on the inside. And that's basically what a rabbet is. Same thing as those joints I did on the end of my my bases over here. But what I need to do is change the collet, which is the collar that holds the bit, because this is a 1/2 inch collet, and I need a 1/4 inch collet for this bit. And we will set this in place. And then I'm going to lock this down. I can find my wrench. So I'll lock this in. And then what I will do is set a height based on the material I'm going to inset into these bases, which, like I said, is just basically 1/4 inch plywood. Because it's the inside and you never actually see it, I don't use anything fancy in terms of wood. I just use 1/4 inch plywood. And it does a good job of just creating a bottom, because all the bottom's there to do is just catch debris that falls out of the machine if you're using it, and any oils or whatever, and keeps it from keeps your table clean or whatever you have your stuff set on. So all I'm going to do is this is the thickness of the plywood I use, and I'm just setting the lip here so that it is going to be a little deeper than that. So that is that part set up. Before I do that, though, I actually need to make sure that the Just dropped one of my boards into the garbage can. I have to make sure that the table, or that the base is flat, because even though I take that time when I glue it up, it still might be a little out of flatness just from being clamped in or whatever. So what I will do is go back over to my saw over here, and I just check to see, and I just basically do the tip test. I go corner to corner and see if I have any tipping, which I don't. This is really super flat. So all of my edges here are nice and flat and flush. And I'm going to check the other one really quickly. And the reason is that if I'm using the router bit and it's coming out of the table, as I run it across, if this is not flat and flush to the table, it'll be an uneven route on the inside. So in order to keep this nice, now you can see this one has just a little bit of tipping, which means one of these corners is kind of high. Sometimes that's because I got a little glue out. Sometimes it's just because it's just a little high right there. So what I'm going to do is just lower this corner down a little bit. And I'm going to get a hand plane, I think is what I would do. Let's get my hand plane over here and just bring this base bottom, that one edge down just a hair. So I've got my number 62, which is a low angle bevel up jack plane. And I'm just gonna go like this. Oh, I hate these. So here's the thing. This wood can tear out really easily, which means sometimes you have to figure out which way you want the wood wants to be planed. And it's not always the way you think it would be. But tear out can be very hard to fix. So you kind of just have to make sure that you take your time and don't get too aggressive. So then what I'll do is come back over to here and I just take a little bit off and check it. That's still pretty tippy. So I'm just looking to see where it's high. And then I'm just going to keep knocking those edges off. So right here seems a little high. So let me try this one. I'm just going to work down that edge and try to clean this up a little bit. And since it was tipping on these edges, I know one of these edges is high. I don't get really aggressive with the flattening part because you can go too far. All right. But this side needs to be fixed. And I think it's over here. I think it's right here. Let me try this. I need to, yeah, see that's catching already, which means I'm going against the grain. Oh, tear out, tear out, tear out. Yeah, the zebra wood is really notorious for tearing out just because of the nature of the grain of the wood. It's beautiful wood, but it can tear out and you have to be really careful with that. So I just have a little stop in my bench right here that stops the wood from moving so that I can run my plane against it, and then I will check it again over here. Okay, we're getting much closer now. Needs a little bit more work. Bring this down a little bit more right here. Like I said, I just do a little bit at a time because I don't want to, oops. I don't want to take too much off because then you're just chasing your tail, trying to find out which corner, and you're just making one worse than the other. So, all All right, I'm going to work on this side now. But I get kind of cool little shavings, which is kind of fun. All right, I can't see my computer. All right, and I'm just going to try to get this one corner down, and I think that will get this flat enough. Let's see here. I think we're really, actually, okay, we're not tipping anymore, so we're flat. So there we go. Yeah, these things are invaluable. These little grippy mats, I use them for sanding on and just kind of, I mean, this is not like super smooth sanded on my work surface here, but the grippy mats they just do a nice job of kind of adding a little bit more hold down to whatever you're doing. Okay, so now we're back over here. We've got our flattened bases, and I'm just setting this bit to be just a little bit deeper than the width of this stuff, because I want this to set inside, and if I sand the bottom or whatever, I don't want to be sanding here. I want this to be raised just a little bit on the inside of the outer perimeter. And that should be good. And what I need to do is make some noise now. So I'm gonna put my dust collection just sit up here, and I think that's good for the height. And this is really simple. All I'm gonna do is take this base. So this is the bottom. I know it's the bottom because the handholds are at the bottom, right? So I'm gonna take this, put it on the inside, and I'm gonna run it all the way around the perimeter of that bit and create a groove in the bottom of the base here. I usually do this in a couple of passes. I don't like to take out a bunch of wood at one time. So bear with me. This gets loud. And actually, well, it won't be loud for you. It'll be loud for me. I have noise canceling on my microphones. So when it starts up, my noise level will drop way down. And then you wouldn't be able to hear me talk even if I tried. But it also won't blow your ears out, which is a good thing. All right, I'm going to turn my router on. I'm going to do this first one, and I'll show you what it turns out and looks like. Take that back. I'm going to do, I forgot, I'm going to do an additional step here. And especially because this wood is kind of prone to tearing out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set, I'm going to use my marking gauge right here. This is a wheel gauge. Basically, it just has a, you can see there, has a little small circular wheel in there, and I can set the depth. So this, basically, you can set the depth to whatever you need. I'm going to set the depth to this thing that I just set up here, and I'm going to mark the inside of this base right here with my marking gauge. And what that's going to do is it's going to just cut a line on the fibers on the inside of this box. It'll cut a line, and all those fibers will basically kind of prevent, because they're already cut, it's going to prevent them tearing out further into the box. And I have pretty good success doing this. So all I do is just run this around the perimeter. This is a circular carbide blade on here, so it does a pretty good job. But all I want to do is run this around the inside. And like I said, all I'm doing is cutting those fibers. Sorry, the camera is attached to the table, so when I shake the table, it shakes the camera. But now I have that line cut all the way around here. So if I am going to get any tear out, it'll confine it to below that line, which is good because you won't see that in the finished product. Because that was just the first pass. I'm going to do another one, but just so you can see here. So this is a very rough line going around the inside, but it establishes the edge where it's going to cut, and that's the important part. So now I'll go ahead and cut it all the way in, and that'll give me basically a 1/4 of an inch deep cut all the way around the perimeter. But I like to just do it in 2 passes and don't like to remove too much wood at one time because then you can get some really big tear out. Right. That one actually turned out, I mean, there was a lot of little pieces that were flying out of there that were large, but because I did that perimeter cut on there, they actually turned out pretty nice. But let me show you what we came up with. So there you can see the perimeter going around. Just basically created a nice shelf that plywood, once I get it cut to size, is going to rest in that shelf and create a bottom. I don't do anything crazy in terms of creating a slot to slide it into or whatever, but this just gets glued in, but it's not weight bearing. But you can see it's just a little bit deeper than this side right here, and but it'll fit in there nicely and create a nice bottom for the box. All right, I'm going to do the next one here, and I'm going to, same process, I'm going to use that marking guide to basically cut that perimeter, make sure I have the bottom of the box. I actually round the corners of the plywood because I don't like having to square this with a chisel. I've done it both ways, but here's the cool thing, is that, where is it? Where is it? Oh, I'll have to get another one. Doggone it. Basically, I usually keep a nickel up here in my on the top of my table. It probably fell off somewhere. But anyway, a nickel, it's really funny. A nickel is the exact radius of this cut right here with this 1/4 inch gravity bit. So really all I do is I take the piece of plywood, I put the nickel right there, and I just draw around that nickel, and then I just take this over to my sander and sand down to that edge, and it fits perfectly in the base. So it's just one of those things that over time I've kind of figured out the easiest way to do it. I started off with the chisel, making all of these round corners square, and then I kind of ended up going, well, you know, I really don't need to do that. All I need to do is round these corners over. I found out the nickel is the perfect radius for that. So I just traced that nickel in the corner of the plywood, and that gives me a perfect radius to fit inside of these bases. So yeah, just kind of funny the way things work out, but it's really just the fastest way for me to do it now. Because if I do the chisel, I mean, there's just kind of chances for things to go wrong with a chisel. Whenever you're chiseling wood out, you can have pieces that fracture and break out and stuff like that. With the sanding, it's just super easy because I just use I've got a 12-inch disc sander. So all I do is take this edge that's going to be round, and I just put it to the disc sander, and I just go just like this as I push it into the sander, and I sand right down to my line. I do all 4 corners, and it's done. So, all right. We got these edges marked. Yeah, the tricks. You know, you do something long enough, you figure out there are easier ways of doing it sometimes. And I am all about working smarter, not harder. Okay, I'm going to do this last one. Like I said, I do this in a couple of passes. I do have to clean up between the first and the second one. I will clean it because you can see there's a ton of dust chips made with this. And I don't want the dust chips to get under the edge because that would keep it from staying nice and flush and flat and even as I do the cut. So I usually clean out about halfway through. Like most of this is really small sawdusty stuff, but just so you can see, there are some larger pieces that fly out of here, and it's like that's why I was talking about the tear out and everything, and that's why I do that perimeter with the edge mark, because it keeps these confined to the inside. So when it's done, believe it, I mean there's nice and smooth and round here. So even though some of these are bigger pieces flying out, it kind of is all confined to that edge. So it all works out in the end. All right. That's the end of that. What time? Wow, it's about 1:30. So that is pretty much at the end of my, take these ears off. That's pretty much at the end of my my streaming time, because I usually break right around lunchtime, which is about 1:30. And but I figure if you want to see, I actually have my test machine here, so I can show you what this looks like with the machine. Well, you won't see what it looks like with the machine in it, but I can show you the machine that I use for test fitting all of these, which is really dusty because it lives under my table here. This is just an old machine that it's an old parts machine that my wife gave me to use. Actually, let me grab this other one because it's better in here. So this is what I would call a full-size base. This is a, I don't know, 115 machine, I think is what this one is. It's either a 15 or a 115. Anyway, you can't see that. Now you can see that. But anyway, Singer made, like I said, millions of these things. And the big thing about this is you want it to fit inside, so it just fits inside. It's not going to set all the way down inside, but what I like to do is make sure that I have about somewhere between a 16th to an eighth of an inch, which would be about 2 mil if you're not in the US, of space. So you can see when this is moving. Let me try this one right here. So you can see when I move this around just a little bit, there's just a little bit of wiggle room in there. And that's really important because you don't want it to be right on the edges of the wood. You want it to have a little bit of room to move around on the inside. This will actually sit on triangular blocks so that it really is just sitting just like this. So about, this is about, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch thick, and about half of that will be resting below the surface. And then there will be triangular blocks that sit in each of the corners for the machine to rest on. That's why I said that bottom that I'm going to put in there, even though it's going to get glued in on that little shelf, and you would think it wouldn't hold the weight. This thing weighs probably 12 to 15 pounds, something like that. And it wouldn't hold the weight if you were just going to rest it on the bottom. But the corners that I put in there get glued to the sides. And those glue joints, they don't fail. They work really well. So that's what I do with these. And then that larger one right here, this one will have a storage compartment on the back side with a lid, which I've already made covers to make the lid out of. So I took scraps off of this zebra wood and glued them together. And then I did this one just for fun, where I put a couple of pieces of maple in between some zebra wood. So you can see that one's kind of cool. And then I got this one. They're not going to be square like this. They will be cut down to fit. And then I do a rabbet just like I did on the bottom. I do a rabbet around the inside of that storage compartment. And then these get cut with the same rounded edges. And then I flush them down to that surface. So they will actually be at the same surface as the side right here. And this one's going to get, well, not this one. This one over here is the one I'm going to do the lid for, and it's going to get, I'll give them 2 lids because I couldn't figure out which one I liked better. So this one, although the zebra wood, when it glued together, looks kind of cool because you can't tell that that's a bunch of strips just because of the nature of this wood itself. But I thought I'd give them a couple of options. So they'll get 2 lids so they can have this one and the other one. And I figured, why not? Because it was just scrap at that point in time. But yeah, so this is the machine. The smaller bases that I'm going to make, which are like these right here that I haven't done yet. These are for what's called a 3/4 size machine. So basically take this machine and shrink it by 1/4, and that's a 3/4 size machine. And they were really popular. There's the model 28, the 128, the 99, the 99K. Anyway, there was a whole bunch of them, and they're very popular. Most of those did not have tables. Most of those actually had bases that they were originally purchased in back in everywhere from like the late 1800s through the 1950s, I want to say. That's the time frame of those things running from one end to the other of their existence. And so people are really looking for bases for those as well. But anyway, that's what I do with my stuff. It's not everything I do. I've got a bunch of different projects that I work on. I make, just for those of you who are first time in here, which I think is most of you, but I do things like I make guitars. So here's a guitar body that I'm working on right here, which is like a semi-hollow. So this is all hollow up through here, but this is a semi-hollow like Telecaster body out of walnut and maple on the top. So I do kind of cool things like that. And I've got a, oh, here's another one. Yeah, so like here's a couple of other ones. Like there's a Stratocaster body that I'm making. Here's another, this is another Telecaster. This one's ash, really heavy. But anyway, that's actually kind of what got me into all the woodworking stuff, was making guitars. And I just kind of evolved from there, because I can make guitars, but I can't make guitars and sell them because, well, there's a bunch of people who make really, really nice luthier grade guitars, and that wouldn't be me. So the time and effort I put into making guitar would not pay back dividends. So my wife's like, well, if you want to make money, make some sewing machine bases. So that's kind of how I evolved into making the sewing machine bases. So the stuff like that, I just make that for myself. I make the guitars for myself. I make tables. I've got a live edge slab of cherry that I'm going to be working on sometime soon. I have to go to the hardwood store and buy some big thick walnut to use for the legs. So once I go to the hardwood store, I will continue working on that. I've got a big slab of oak back here. Check this out. If I can lift it, it's very heavy. But this is going to be a table. It's quite thick and quite heavy. But anyway, this will be a table as well. I just kind of still working on what I want it to look like when it's done. But I do different things. But my main cash source is from the sewing machine bases. That's where I get most of the money that supports all the other stuff that I like to do. So you got a maple that's being cut. So here's the thing, which is very cool. Like that oak that I just picked up came from a friend's tree that came down a few years ago, and he cut it all up. He actually went and got an Alaskan chainsaw mill and made a bunch of slabs and stuff like that. The only thing about getting slabs from trees that you cut is to make sure that it is going to be good and dry. Usually they say about a year for every inch of thickness. And if you're going to do a table, you're probably going to have it at least a couple of inches thick. So you'll need to let that wood sit around and in a flattened state with air circulating around it for a couple of years to get it to be usable for a slab. So yeah. Oh, if you've got a barn, yeah, just make sure you store them, sticker them. You know what stickering is, right? So you put little flat sticks like this underneath them so you can get air circulation all around. Do you have a mill, like a sawmill or chainsaw mill? Because that's very cool. I don't have enough tree lumber to really invest in one, but I'd love to have a sawmill. That would be super cool. Oh my God, you got 6 ricks of, oh my God, look at you drying your wood in there. Okay, good on you. That's good stuff. I just like dried firewood because I also have a lathe. And so I'll grab pieces of firewood and I just turn stuff on my lathe. I actually have somebody brought down a tree and I went and grabbed 2 big round pieces of wood that they'd cut up and had set on the side. I just threw them in the back of my truck and brought them home, and they're sitting in my garage. And one year I'll cut them into pieces and do stuff on my lathe with them. But oh, so yeah, I guess if you've got a smoker, you definitely need some wood for a smoker. I have a gas fireplace, so I don't really have a lot of need. I have a burn barrel though, and I do burn a lot of the scrap that I can't use. I throw in my burn barrel, and that's how I get rid of most of my scrap I burn now. I used to haul it to the dump, which is kind of a pain in the butt. But I have a burn barrel now. I just bought a 55-gallon drum and drilled a bunch of holes in it and put it on some concrete blocks. And now every fall or so, I have a big burn party and do marshmallows and stuff. So, but I'm always using my scrap. I don't throw scrap away. In fact, you all weren't here at the beginning of the stream. I have a ton of, I'm going to grab some of it here. I save a lot of strips because I have to get my wood down to a certain thickness. So I have all these strips like this. And so I will take all of these and get them down to uniform size. And then I make charcuterie boards and stuff or in-grain cutting boards or whatever I want to make. But I try to get the most out of my scrap that I absolutely can. I hate throwing wood away, especially because I pay for the wood. If it's one thing if you're cutting down trees in your yard and you've just got all this wood, but when you go out and pay somebody else for all this wood, I hate throwing wood away. So even these small scraps like this, I will save them and I will turn them into like a bandsaw box or something, which is great for like little kids and stuff. You know what a bandsaw box is? This is a bandsaw. This is one I've just it was kind of trashed, but this is a bandsaw box. So basically I have 5 pieces of wood glued together. So you can see them right there. And this was on the inside. So you cut the back of it off and then you cut out your inside piece. Then you clear out a little pocket in there. Let me do this one right here. You cut out a little pocket in here, you cut edges off of these things and you glue everything back together. This has paper from a design on the front. I just haven't cleaned it off. And then it fits inside like that. And you've got a little box. It's a bandsaw box. So there you go. So I'll keep all my scrap and I'll do things like bandsaw boxes and stuff like that because like I said, I can't stand not having, wood that is usable. So my burn barrel gets little tiny pieces of wood or really super thin strips I can't use for anything else. And everything else goes into little scrap wood projects. And I just don't tell people it's scrap wood. That's the one thing. It's like, oh yeah, I just had all this junk laying around. I made a gift for you. Okay, they probably wouldn't feel good about that. But if I say, yeah, man, look at all this stuff. All this premium woods that I used. I made this, thought of you and made this beautiful cutting board for you. And they're like, oh my God, it's so lovely. Thank you. And I'm like, there you go. But, is what it is. They get something really nice and I get full use out of all my wood and don't have to burn it. So that's a win-win in my book. But anyway, Good grief, 142. All right, gang. Hey, I really appreciate you all dropping in and being here, because it's kind of fun having people to interact with. Sometimes I'm just here talking to myself. It gets a little lonely and a little weird at times because talking to myself. But I feel a little less crazy when there's people in the house. So I appreciate you all being here. I do this every excuse me, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I start at 11 o'clock Eastern time. So I don't know where you all are, but I'm in the eastern part of the United States. So I start at 11 o'clock and usually go for 2.5 hours. So I usually end about 1:30 in the afternoon. And 50 followers, I know, that's awesome, isn't it? Thank you so much. I really do. I really super appreciate you all stopping in and being here, because like I said, it just makes it more fun for me. That's why I do it. I'm not doing this to get affiliate money or anything else. I just do it because, well, I have a 25-year-old son who says, "Why aren't you streaming?" And I'm like, because that's for gamers. He's like, "No, do it. Everybody does different streaming." And I was like, okay. So it kind of lets me share what I do with other people if they're interested in, and it makes my time in the shop kind of fun. So I appreciate everybody who stops in. I really appreciate the raids because they're really fun. Yeah, there are a lot of artists on Twitch, which I don't think there used to be, but I think it's a lot more now. I don't know if TikTok had anything to do with that, because there's a lot of art stuff on TikTok. I know it's weird. I do watch TikTok videos and stuff, but I think people started doing things on TikTok to get people to start following them on their Twitch channels to watch them do things and painting and pictures and sculpting and all this stuff live. So woodworking doesn't always translate well to a live stream. I do my best. I've got, 1, 2, 3, 4 different cameras set up, and I try to give everybody a little something to look at, because it's not easy. Because woodworking can be very boring to watch at times. But anyway, thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate it. I hope you stop back. Like I said, I'm here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I do this 3 days a week. So thanks again for coming. And in the words of Bill and Ted, be excellent to each other. And I will see you all on the next stream. Take care. I think. If I can find my button. There it is.